Hello, Olivia. This is 1-7. This is the last section of the chapter. We're doing midpoints today. Woo-woo! Midpoints. Finding the midpoint is like finding the... Anybody have a guess? Middle. If I, kind of, not middle, that's not the right answer, but that's right. Middle, another name for middle, if I have 2 grades in my grade book and I say find me the midpoint, I'm median. Saying find the median. Nope. Average. Finding the midpoint is like finding the average. Okay? If I have 2 numbers and I'm finding the midpoint, it's the exact same as the average, right? 2 things, the middle of those is the average of them, right? So finding the midpoint is like finding the average. Keep that in mind. I'll say that a bunch of times. Finding the midpoint is like finding the average, okay? They are equidistant. So the middle is equidistant from the left and the right endpoints, right? Okay, equidistant, that's average. Okay, so let's do example 1. What is the midpoint of x, z? X is at -3, z is at 8. How do you find an average?
You take all of them, you add them.
Add them together and? Divide by 2. Add them together and divide by 2. So -3 plus 8 divided by 2. -3 plus 8 is 5. 5 divided by 2 is 2.5. So they say 5 over 2 or 2.5. The middle is 2.5. Let's see if it seems about in the right spot. 2.5 is there. Does that seem equal distance from one side or the other? I would say so.
Also, just look for the median?
Yeah, kind of. Maybe.
Yeah.
But sometimes they won't give you a number line. So just add them together and divide by 2. Okay? 5 over 2 or 2.5. Can you add them in the other order? Let's say I say 8 plus a -3 like they did. Can I do that also? It doesn't matter what order you put them in, right? Okay? Alright, that was example 1. Let's go to example 2. Go to the next page. This is a real world application for midpoint. What they're trying to do is they're trying to figure out where this sign needs to go up above here to be exactly in the middle. And what they're doing is they're saying from here to here is 7.5 and from here to here is 13.5. The last example that we did, those 2 dimensions were stacked, like on the same line. Now they're not. There's one distance here and then one distance is also labeled here. If we find the midpoint or find the average of those, it's going to give me a number over here that's exactly in the middle. And that will tell me from the left side where I need to measure over to put my sign above the door. Does that make sense? Okay, so let's find the average of 7.5 and 13.5. So 7.5 plus 13.5, and then I divide by 2. Can you add those in your head?
Yeah, 21.
I do this. I take the half off of here and put the half on here. Is that how you do it?
No.
Or the other way? I make it into a whole number. I steal the half here and I borrow it over to the other side, so I have 8 plus 13, which is 21. Maybe? Okay. 21 divided by 2 is?
11.5. No,
10.5? 10.5, so that means that from the left side, I'm going to measure over 10.5 feet, and that will tell me where is exactly in the middle of where this door ends and then where this door ends, right? Okay, so.
You could just put the sign above the door.
And just not have it be straight, sure.
You can
Or not have it
measure,
be
you can
centered,
measure
correct?
the door length instead of the.
Right, right.
and then-
So, okay, so I buy that, Brian, okay? This is what they're doing, ready? So, if we do what you say, I like what Brian says. If we do what Brian says, okay, I'm going to erase. Brian says, let's just measure the door instead, okay? So, like here, from here to here, that would be how far? 6 feet, right? Because I'm looking at these 2 numbers and I can tell that it's 6 foot, right? So, Brian, what you're doing is you're doing exactly the same thing. You're saying, okay, if that's 6 foot across, where would the middle be? 3 foot, because you're measuring from here, which you have designated as 0 now, right? This is 0, 6 foot over. So you really did find the average. You just did it in your head. 0 and 6. What's the average of 0 and 6? It's 3, right? But here you're measuring from the edge of the door instead of the edge of the wall.
Yeah, so why can't you just do that?
Now you could do that, but the problem is if you're measuring where this sign goes, how do you, like, you don't have the edge of the door going up here, right? To measure over from, right? Does that make sense? You see what I'm saying? Like up above, the edge of the door doesn't go all the way up to the top. So in that case, we might want to measure from here because we can go from the wall over 10.5 feet, right? Okay, makes sense, kind of? You have to go with what you have, right? Okay, let's move on to the next thing. Next page, backside. Here we go. Go to the diagram that looks like this. Can you see it? This point, I'm making this up. Let's say that this is 2, 8, and let's say this is, I don't know, 10, comma 2. I'm making these coordinates up. And I want to find exactly in the middle. Right? That's the point 2, comma 8. That's the point 10, comma 2. I don't want to find it exactly in the middle. Finding the midpoint is still like finding the average, except you have to do it twice for the x's and the y's, okay? So if I take 2 and 10, and I average them together, 2 plus 10 divided by 2, what's that? 6. That's going to give me my left end point. So this is the point 6, comma something, right? 8 and 2, if I add them together and divide by 2, that gives me 5. So 6, comma 5, that is the middle. Finding the midpoint is still like finding the average, even if you have coordinate points. You're adding them together and divided by 2. That's it. You just do it twice. Got it? Let's do this one. Find the midpoint, and we have not them graphed. They're not graphed. Negative 2 and 8 is what we're adding together and dividing by 2, and then I do the same thing for 1, comma 3. 1 plus 3 divided by 2. Okay, what's negative 2 plus 8 divided by 2? 6 over 2, which is 3, comma something. 1 plus 3 divided by 2 is 4 over 2, which is 2. That's my midpoint. Okay, now, are you listening to this? When you guys do this and when you get to the test, you will get to the point where you'll start to do a midpoint and you'll be like, oh crap, was I supposed to add them or was I supposed to subtract them? Because you guys get this confused with like the y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, right? That's how you find slope. And you're like, oh crap, I'm used to subtracting. Was I supposed to subtract or was I supposed to add? Just think. Finding the midpoint is like finding the average. And when you average them, do you subtract? No, you add. Okay, so remember that and you will remember to add. Does that make sense? I have a lot of kids that like forget and they subtract instead. You're not doing slope. You're not subtracting the coordinates. You're adding them together and divided by 2. Got it? So that can help you remember. Finding the midpoint is like finding the average. To average, you add. All right, here we go. Let's do this one. Now they're giving us the midpoint. They're saying P is the midpoint. Okay, so I'm going to do this. I'm going to say A is here, B is here, and P is the middle there. Right? This is probably not drawn to scale. I have no idea where these coordinates are at, but I'm just making them up. Okay? A is there, B is here. B is at 8, comma 3. And we don't know what A is. That's the problem. That's what we're trying to find. Okay? So if I know one of the endpoints and I know the middle, how can I find this other guy? How can I find where he is?
Find the difference between.
Yeah, exactly.
3 and 8.
Right, so Remington just said 8 is here and 3 is here. How far apart are 8 and 3? You added 5 to 3 to get 8. Now how do I find this coordinate?
Just 8 minus.
I'm going to subtract 3, or subtract 5. If I added 5 to get 8, now I'm going to subtract 5 to get the other coordinate. So what's 3 minus 5? Negative 2. Does that make sense? You add 3 to the middle to get the right one. You subtract 3 from the middle to get the left one. Okay? All right, 1/2. What did I add to him to get 3? 2.5. Now can we subtract 2.5 to get this guy? What is 1/2 minus 2.5? Negative 2. Will that work? Okay, they don't do it that way. They say, let's set up the equation and have a variable that we don't know and set that equal to 3 and then undo it and whatever junk. I don't want to do that. Just figure out what you're adding and then subtract it. Figure out what you're adding and then subtract it, okay? Or vice versa. If you're subtracting it, then you're going to add it to the other side, okay? Negative 2, negative 2. Good? Let's do this one. Let's go to example 5. Now we're talking about bisectors. The word bisector means to separate into 2 equal pieces. That's what it means to bisect something. Bi means 2, sect means separate, 2 separate pieces that are equal. Something of that nature. Bisect. Okay, example 5. It tells me, this is the very most important part of the whole thing, that T is the midpoint. This is the midpoint, which means it's exactly in the middle. Okay, another way that they could do that is not by telling us that T is the midpoint, but they could mark this diagram. How do they mark it so that I know that they're the same? Remember? Brian's doing one of these. These little tick marks, that would tell me that those two pieces are the same, right? So this left piece is 2x plus 3, the right piece is 4x minus 5. What can I do? Set them equal. They're both the same, right? Set them equal. 2x plus 3 is equal to 4x minus 5. All right, then what shall we do?
Subtract 2 and add 5.
Subtract the 2x. Can I do that? And add the 5 at the same time? If you need to do it as two separate pieces, go for it. So I've got 8 on the left and 2x on the right. Yep, let's divide by 2. So x is 4. That is not the answer that they want. Find the measure of RT. So don't forget to plug back in. Let's plug 4 in here for RT. So 2 times 4 plus 3. 11. 2 times 4 is 8 plus 3 is 11. That's what they want for an answer. Does that make sense? Am I going too fast? Nope, we're doing okay? Okay, last question. Example 6, which is on the next page. On the next page. They want us to find the total length. It says find the measure of AC. That's from here to here. The whole thing. But it still tells me that B is the midpoint. That's very important. So what are you going to do?
So you'll set them equal to each other and then
just
plug
add,
back in times
and
2.
Yeah, all of you are correct. All of those, all of the above. Set them equal to each other, then we can plug back in. We can plug them into both sides and add them together, or Megan just said plug it into one side and double it, right? Because they're going to be the same. So 5x minus 3 equals 2x plus 9. And we are going to subtract 2x, and I'm going to add the 3. So I have like 3x equals 12. Hey, guess what x is again? 4.
So it'll be 8.
So let's plug it back in. 5 times 4. 5 times 4 is 20 minus 3 is 17. I can plug it in here, but I know it's also going to be 17, right? So AC is going to be 34, the whole thing together. Now what happens if they didn't tell me that that was the middle? If they undo, cancel. What if this guy wasn't the middle? Would we set them equal if that wasn't the middle? No, what do we have to do instead? That guy wasn't the middle, right? If this guy wasn't the middle, we wouldn't know necessarily which side was bigger, right? If this guy wasn't the middle, we'd have to say like this guy plus this guy, and then they'd have to give me the full length equals that guy. Does that make sense? Remember we did that the other day? So if they don't tell me it's the middle, I would have to do the left side plus the right side equals the total length, and they'd have to give me the total length, okay? But if they tell me it's the middle, I can just set those two equal, and I don't need to know the total length. Okay, make sense? All right, okay, that is all I have for you. Homework is a little shorter. 2 through 6, the evens, and then 8 through 24 by 4s. I'm pretty sure I wrote down the wrong homework assignment for that, but we'll go with it. I think I went off of 1-6. And your homework assignment was actually supposed to be longer, but we'll go. Okay, good? Happy with that? All right, goodbye, Olivia.